Supposedly, there was some information leaked by the Treasury Department on how much tax the 25 richest Americans have been paying, how much income tax. And the data, which comes from the IRS through the Treasury Department, whatever, was leaked to a news organization, ProPublica, obviously a left-wing advocacy group that somehow got their hands on this information. And as far as the media is concerned, this is like a bombshell. This is like a smoking gun. And basically, the way it is being spun is they're showing how much income taxes the wealthiest people paid, like Warren Buffett or Bezos or Zuckerberg or Elon Musk. And they're comparing what they paid in income taxes to how much wealth they gained in a given year based mainly on stock market appreciation. So they're saying, hey, these wealthy people are paying an average of like 3% of their income in tax, but they're including in their income the unrealized paper gains on their ownership of stock. But that's not income. If you haven't sold your stock, the fact that it appreciated doesn't mean that you've got any income. You don't derive any income until you sell the stock and get a capital gain. And that capital gain will be part of your income. And certainly there were years where these very rich people sold stock, and during those years, they paid enormous income taxes. But what the media is focusing on are the years where these wealthy people didn't sell any stock at all, and therefore didn't realize any income that was subject to tax. Now, we have an income tax in this country. We don't have a wealth tax. Now, a wealth tax would be unconstitutional unless they wanted to apportion it, which they don't. So you can't tax wealth. You can only tax the income that is derived from that wealth. And if you're not deriving any income from your wealth, then you don't have to pay an income tax because that's the type of tax. But it's very disingenuous to try to claim unrealized capital gain is income and then show how much somebody paid in income taxes relative to their increasing wealth when we're not taxing the wealth. But apparently this is outraging everybody that Warren Buffett hardly pays any taxes. Well, that's because Warren Buffett never sells any stock, and he pays himself a minimal salary. But you know what? He's giving away all his money to charities, so it's not like he's screwing people over. It's charities that are going to get most of Warren Buffett's money. I'd much rather private charities get it than the U.S. government get it. But a lot of these other companies, too, these executives, they don't actually have any income. Because what if these stocks go down? I mean, what if the market crashes, right? Then the whole thing reverses. I mean, it's almost like they're claiming that we should include as income the unrealized appreciation of an asset. Well, if that were the case, and we were trying to make people pay an income tax on unrealized capital gains, what would happen when the market goes down? If the market crashes, are we going to have to send out checks? Is the U.S. government going to have to reimburse all these wealthy people for their paper losses with actual money? This whole thing is ridiculous. But to act like this is some big revelation that, oh my God, people are not paying taxes on the appreciated value of their stocks. Well, of course. I mean, no American is paying taxes on the appreciated value of their unrealized gains. People have houses now that they own. They're going way up. Nobody is paying tax. The IRS is not saying, hey, your house went up in value this year. Let's tax you on it, right? What about all the young people that bought cryptocurrency years ago? Somebody might have put $5,000 into Bitcoin and now it's worth $1 million. They haven't paid any taxes. They haven't sold the Bitcoin yet. If they haven't sold, they don't have any income. They still have the same Bitcoin that they started with. They only have income once they sell and realize that income. But the question is, why was this information leaked? I don't think this was an accident, and I don't think that the Biden administration somehow didn't have a hand in the selective release of this information. And by the way, if I was one of these people, I would be protesting Bezos. This information that you send to the IRS is supposed to be confidential, right? The government is not supposed to leak it out because you are disclosing private financial information. It's not for public dissemination. You're supposed to expect some degree of privacy, at least from the public. I mean, obviously, you get no privacy from the government. You basically bare your soul. They know everything about you. That's why my dad always called the tax return a confession, because what you're doing is you're confessing to the government. You're not returning to government any information that they understand. In fact, the original tax return, the reason it was called a return is because the government sent it to you already prepared, right? They figured out your income. They sent you a bill, right? And then you looked it over and you agreed with it. You signed it. You put a check in and you returned it to the government. So the government gave you the information and then you returned it to them. That's why it's a tax return. You're returning it to the government. But now the government doesn't know anything about you until you confess everything. So we have a tax confession. But, they're making a big deal out of the fact that Jeff Bezos took advantage of, a $4,000 child tax credit. Now, how do they know that he took that tax credit unless they have his entire return? So this information is being leaked. It's been shared. This is personal information. I think there could be some kind of lawsuit here because it's not in the public interest. I don't even think newspapers should be reporting information that was obviously stolen on private individuals where the public has no compelling interest to know the deductions of individuals. But of course, making a big deal out of the fact that he took advantage of the tax credit, it's in the law. Why wouldn't he? Is he supposed to ignore it? I mean, how many Americans, when they're doing their taxes, just decide that they're not going to take advantage of their deductions? Does anybody do that? You think anybody has a conversation with their accountant and they say, you know what? I don't want my deductions. I just want to pay higher taxes than the law. So don't give me all the deductions. Just, I'm just going to pay a higher tax. Nobody says that. So why should Bezos? Just because he's rich? Yeah, pay a little extra. Don't take that credit. I mean, look, the credit is there and he takes it like everybody else. This is all class warfare, as if somehow he's an evil, bad person. But again, there is a strategy here. What is going on in Washington right now? There's a budget battle. The Biden administration wants this $6 trillion spending, right? Official spending bill, biggest ever. And he wants to pay for part of it by raising taxes on the rich. And he's having a problem because none of the Republicans in the Senate are going to go for it. And so he needs all of the Democrats so that Kamala Harris can break the tie. One Democratic defector sinks the entire thing. And there are some Democrats that are a little gun shy about raising taxes. And so this is meant to put pressure on them and to provide political cover by creating this false outrage among the public that somehow the millionaires are not paying any tax, that it's the working class that are paying all the taxes and the rich, the super rich, are paying nothing. And that's why this was selectively leaked to advance a policy agenda. Look, I agree that the working class gets screwed by the income tax. That's why I want to abolish it. I don't think we should have taxes on labor. I don't think you should have to pay an income tax on your salary or your wages. In fact, in the original concept of an income tax, it wasn't supposed to be taxed because wages were not even considered a gain, right? If you work for wages, it's an even trade. You give your employer your labor and he gives you money. So it's an even trade. In fact, when an employer gives you money, the value of your labor, the employer deducts that from their tax return. So if your employer deducts from his income the value of the money that he gives you as an employee, why can't you deduct from your own income tax the value of the labor that you give to your employer? Because your employer is giving you money that has value, but you're giving your employer your labor, which also has value. In fact, if it didn't have value, your employer wouldn't be willing to buy it. So when you work for wages, you don't have a gain. You've exchanged labor for money. There is no gain. Income tax is a tax on a gain. So nobody who just works for wages or salaries should pay income taxes. See, the solution to this problem is not to try to raise taxes on capital, but to get rid of the taxes on labor. But of course, we can't do that unless we dramatically shrink the size of government. But the Biden administration wants to make government much, much bigger. But the only constitutional way to pay for that is by taxing the middle class, because that's where the money is. The wealth taxes are off the table. And if they raise income taxes up dramatically, well, they're not going to get the revenue from the rich because they're not going to have the income because the taxes will help destroy it.